Hello, screenwriters and novel writers. Welcome to Writing for Screens, Writing My Novel Progress Report number 11. My name is Glenn Gers, and I am Writing for Screens. I am the man who made this and am the only current employee of the channel. Most of the time, I am here talking about screenwriting. I am trying to give some skills and tools that I can pass on from my 25-year career writing for TV and movies. But now I am retired from that and I am working on a novel. So every once in a while, I'm giving a little progress report on what it's like to write a novel as a former screenwriter, as a somewhat beginning novelist. So that's what today's episode is. Usually on Wednesdays, I will be here at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time Zone to do a variety of different screenwriting classes. But the main thing that this channel offers is here on this. This is a screen grab of the channel page. And if you'll see down at the bottom, there are some playlists. The first 3 playlists are called Screenwriting Essentials, Screenwriting Tools, Skills and Craft, and The Process, Being a Writer. Together, this puts together about 50 10-minute videos. Each one is a lesson on a particular topic. The topic is not just the title, it's the thumbnail. So you can just look at them and say, he's talking about genre or character or dialogue. Lots of different things I tried to condense down into useful tools and skills because I do not believe that there is a right or wrong way to write. I do not believe there's a right or wrong thing to try and write. Everyone has to figure out their own path, their own goals, what they want to do, what they can do in the reality of their current moment. That is your job as an artist, to figure out what you can do and what you want to do and to work towards that in the midst of all the variety and possibility that is writing. So, one of the biggest tasks of a writer is to figure out who they are, what they want to do. I cannot tell you how to do that. All I can do is give you some tools to try and use as you figure this out for yourself. That's what this channel is about. Let me do some quick hellos. Hello, Sonia. Hello, Doug and Donna and Doreen. Hello, Just Paul and Marty. Hi, Marty Mac. A-Link, yes, hello, hand waving, and Pelicans and Jean. Hello, everybody. Great to have you here. We are going to be talking today about where I am in the past couple of weeks working on my novel. But before I do that, I want to give you a quick little something I saw on Facebook. Yes, that old person's medium. However, there is a thing called the Screenwriting Life Podcast. Screenwriting Life Podcast is by Meg Lefauve and Lorianne McKenna. They are 2 writers who I know and respect a great deal. They do this channel. It's a podcast, but they also have a Facebook group in which people share ideas, gives each other support. So I truly do recommend this. Meg, in this Facebook group, posted this chart. I think she got it from somewhere. I do not know where, but I do know that it's really right. So Meg posted this. It's how we think learning happens and how learning actually happens. In other words, you do not go from, I'm going to learn everything. I'm going to get really strong and complete at it. I'm going to then practice it and make progress. That's how it goes. That's actually not the experience of learning. The experience of learning is you get some knowledge and you start to practice it, and this is difficult. And then it requires you to go back and get more knowledge and get more practice and more difficulty until eventually, with more practice, you do get progress and your comfort comes at the end of that. That is, in a way, what I'm going to be talking about here. I'm going to show you in my own experience, and I am a highly experienced professional writer. I have been making a living at writing for over 25 years, and yet it is still difficult. It is especially difficult when you try and do something new, and you should always be trying to do something new. That is really, really important. Hi, Ricky. Hi, Thumper. Hello, Michael. Oh, great. Yes, thank you. I'm really glad to hear that somebody took me up on that. This podcast, The Screenwriting Life, is terrific. Okay, so let's talk about my novel. Here's where we are at the moment. Okay, this is my documents that I've been working from. As you can see, what I did was I broke it down into one project. I work in a thing called Scrivener, for those of you who don't know. You don't have to do that, but I did one document project for the text itself because it was getting pretty big, and then one for the notes. That's the outline. That's all my character notes, any thoughts I have, plus scene-by-scene outline. Now, I did this because I wanted the text to be uncluttered. But as I got into working on the text, and what I did was I had from various years that I'd worked on this, certain text that I had written, rough draft, okay? The first couple of chapters are pretty solid, but as it goes along, it gets to be more and more, well, let's see, yeah. For instance, this has no text at all, this chapter. This chapter, no text at all. I have not written it. I do, however, have the outline for these sections. That was in notebook 2. Okay, so let's look at the outline of this thing that I'm talking about here. I've written detailed thoughts, or at least focused on what the scene, each chapter's about. My chapters are going to be very small. So what I wanted to do was eventually, I thought my system, my method of writing this would be as it is when I'm writing a screenplay. I have the outline in one place and I refer to it as I create the text document. I realized that with something this big, it was feeling a little awkward going back and forth between, for instance, this and then the notes on that chapter. So what I did was I used a thing that they have in this software, which is I created this section for notes. Let me see if I can shape that a little better. Okay, so as you can see over here, well, my face is over it right now, but there is a little section where I could put notes for this document. And what I did was I went through the outline scene by scene, and for each scene I copied it and I pasted it into this document. I put it in here. So this is now I never have to open the outline at all. I can simply go from this section. I can read, oh, this is what I need to have. Now, some of it is already there. What I'm going to do is I'm going through it scene by scene, chapter by chapter, and the most important thing I'm finding is there are certain sections, especially as I go along, where I just have almost nothing. Okay, this is like some little notes. But here I have tons of notes on this. So what I've been doing is slowly but surely, for anything where I have nothing, I need to start writing something. So what I've been doing is just going through, and there's a lot of scenes. And for instance, in this one, I've got nothing. So the first thing I need to do is simply get something on the page. I need to get this stuff here, this action that I've imagined. I need to write a version of it, and it can be bad. It can be awful, as long as I can get it into the document so I can say, okay, now, when I am looking at this and it's awful, how can I make it better? How can I expand it or simplify it, whatever it is that it needs? I can't do that until I have the rough draft. Let me do a quick check on. Okay, I got some notes here. Hello, DG and Clyde Dashing. It's good to see you. Yes, Scrivener is, I believe, excellent software. But again, it is not required. It's not necessary. You do not need any particular software in order to write. Hello, Learn to Teach. And hello, Kirby. Okay, so I'm just going to show you a little bit about how, and this is sort of tricky because when I was writing a script for everybody, when I was showing you how to do it, I felt very comfortable doing that. I've written a lot of scripts. This is different. But let's see. Okay, so in this particular chapter, all right. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna work on this now. So let's do this. Okay. So right now I've got in this chapter a guy who's kind of a jerk and a young woman who is in love with the main character or attracted to him, but because the main character is pining for a different person, they've not gotten together, even though they are both interested in each other. Anyway, the point is in this chapter, these characters come over to the main character's house and as a surprise visit. So what I need to do, for instance, right now I need to know, like, how am I going to get this started? What am I going to do to start this chapter? So let's get it formatted. All right. Whitliff wouldn't leave it alone. Whitliff is trying to get some gossip on another character. Or maybe I should have known Whitliff wouldn't give up. Not sure about which one it is, so I'm gonna leave two possible sentences here. I'll come back to it. I'll figure it out later. Right now I just need, like I said, I need to get rid of the blank page and make sure that everything in these notes is somehow in this section. So pounding on my apartment door at nearly midnight. Nearly. None of this is going to stay. What I just simply need to do is get something here. I heard them before the pounding on my door. I heard them. Reckless footsteps, drunken, disorganized singing in the stairway. It was Whitliff with a group of drunken painters singing Christmas carols. Okay, so what I'm doing here basically is I'm just trying to get, so I need to invent two, three. Was Edith. When I opened the door, Whitliff immediately pushed in, leading 4 others, Edith and TBD others. Okay. Merry Christmas, Monroe. Whitliff yelled. I'm sorry, Edith. Okay, I already said it was. So basically, this is what I'm doing. I am trying to just get the facts, get every possible detail or fact that I can corral out of my chaotic thoughts, and get it into the page. Once I have it on the page, I'll start to think, where do I want to put each piece of this information? What kind of watching Whitliff. What I want to suggest is this. He was jealous. He was comparing my work to his. In other words, one of the things that I'm trying to do here is just try and get everything down. I do not know yet how I will do it. Eventually, when I have things like here, this is something I did earlier this week. So now I've got it's about a page and a half. And what I'll do is I'll look back at it when it's cooled down, when I have more of a sense of distance, and I'll start to think how can I shape it into a chapter? Start to do the real work of writing. That's going to take months now. This is I expect I would love to force myself to do more. I'm hoping that I will do more every day. What usually happens is I get a little bit, like if I get a page or two done, I need to refresh my mind. I need to step away and then come back when I start the next section, the next blank section. So what I unfortunately do is very often that's when other things come up for me. All of a sudden I have chores to do and errands and people to talk to and whatever it is. I think, well, I'm pleased and proud to have gotten a hunk done, because I know if you keep doing if you just do a page a day, in a year or two, you'll have a rough draft. It won't be good, but you will have a rough draft. I would rather do 3 or 4 pages a day if I could, so that I could get the rough draft done in a quarter of the time or the third of the time. But we'll see. One of the things that I've really discovered about the process for me is it's not steady. You're not a factory. You're working on. You're working with your brain, and some days work better than others. So what I try to do is make sure I get something done. The more rhythm, the more routine I can get, the more work I can do on an average day. When I'm starting a project, if I get a paragraph, if I get a page, that's a day's work. Once I've done that consistently for a while, I start to build up to where I can work 3 or 4 hours at a time, and I can get quite a few pages. But I can't do that every day. First of all, life doesn't let you. Life doesn't let you do your best. Life comes at you. But what I'm trying to do is simply get a bit done every day, so that the routine, the rhythm becomes more comfortable, and pretty soon it's sort of like your head is in it. When you open it up, you're not thinking, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. You think, oh yeah, this has to connect to that, or this has to be polished up, or this one, now that I've written this other section, I know what to do with that. All those things come to you if you do it routinely, regularly, as often as you can, as much as you can. It's not easy. Emotionally, for me at least, maybe for some people it's a breeze. I know a lot of different people who try a lot of different mental tricks to get this done. Some people set themselves a page count or a word count or a time count. I don't set that as a regular thing. I set for myself the count of get something done today, Glenn. When my confidence builds from having done this a bit, I will push myself harder. Let me check some of these comments. Use a synopsis field for the outline. That way I can see it in the corkboard view. Yes, what we're talking about here is in this software Scrivener, there is this section here, which if you, if you go to, they have different ways to look at it. So you can look at it like this as index cards, or like this as a list of scenes. Everybody's different. I have found it's very tricky because for me, a lot of what I'm doing here is trying to transfer the process that I worked out for myself to write scripts to novels. Here's the thing about a script. A script has 50 or 60 scenes tops, little chapters, scenelets, whatever you want to call them. My novel has 4 times that easily. So I can't keep it all in my head. When I write a script, if I've gone through the outline enough times, I can sort of keep it all in my head. Keeping a novel in my head is harder. So what I am trying to do is simply adapt the system by which I wrote scripts into novels. There's a lot of learning involved. There's a lot of trial and error. Oh, that doesn't work the way it did. But basically the process is similar. And I just, for whatever reason, I wanted something where here, what I could do is, for instance, if I have a chapter like this, when I am done typing out these little sections here, I will delete it so that I can tell when my notes become empty, when my note section becomes blank, like this one, then I can put it away and just start to read it through and get the flow and start to really work on it as a novel. But the main thing is, I just don't know I don't know any way to write finished text right off the bat. It takes some groping. It takes some trial and error, some experimenting. Like you saw, like I will do 2 or 3 possible first lines for a chapter. So do I want to focus on this or that? So I'll write them both down. Later I will read it and one will just feel stronger than the other, and I'll delete the other and then I have it. I can't do that all at once. I need to take that process. That's how I've been doing it. So I kept the outline separate because the outline was big and unwieldy, and it didn't feel quite for me right to try and do it as the corkboard. It was the space was too small. One very important phrase I had to learn: do not be afraid of the blank page. Exactly. Yes. The main thing is to make it not blank. The blank page is always going to be a little intimidating because there's nothing there and it feels like a failure. But as soon as you get even just a little bit on the page, you start to loosen up. You start to feel some confidence. And this is important. Confidence comes from having done it a bunch of times. If you are doing it for the first time, will not feel confidence. This is the first novel I've written since the 1980s, but it's not the first novel I've written, and it's not the first project I've written. I've written and completed dozens and dozens of fairly difficult large projects. So I have a sense I will get this done. I have a confidence that if I follow these steps, it will actually work. You can't be expected to have confidence before you write. Confidence comes after. Confidence is the reward and the skill you'll have for next time. The first time you may just not have confidence. You have to work without confidence. That's what happens. I think even Stephen King said something like, "Blank page is an unopened bottle of whiskey. You need to start to get the feeling." Yes, that's absolutely true. You need to start. You need to guess. You need to try. Sometimes all you can do is just write bits and pieces, disorganized bits and pieces. That's what I am currently doing. Hi, She Breathes in Gold. I am glad that you love them. This one is very off the cuff. This one is not. I have not planned out or organized my thoughts on this. Being that it will take months, do you ever work on multiple projects at once? Yes. Okay, that's a good question. These are all actually good questions, but I meant this one is interesting because for most of my life, I had multiple projects going. Partly because my brain comes up with multiple projects, and if I'm working on one, the thing I didn't want to do was to simply drop whatever I'm working for the next one, because there will always be a next one. I will always be coming up with new ideas. So instead, I started to say, okay, I'm going to keep a pile. In fact, I did let me see if I can, this video, brainstorming and scrap piles. This scrap pile concept, that came because I had so many things that I wanted to get going. I needed to put them somewhere where I would not have to focus on them, but I wouldn't lose them. So I came up with this concept of scrap piles. I urge you to watch that video, Brainstorming and Scrap Piles. I will put a link to it in the description about 10 minutes after this video is done, so you could just look down there, click the link, watch that video. So the answer is I always had multiple projects going on. The problem became when I was 20 or 30 and I had a big pile of projects. That was just cool. It was just like, oh, I have stuff to do. Now I'm 65 years old. I have my pile of projects would take longer than my lifetime to complete. So what I've done is I've created a pile of things that made me feel bad. So the problem with having multiple projects going on at once for me is, while I do actually get a couple done, I often don't get others done. For scripts, that worked fine. For this novel, I've decided to only work on that. That's one of the reasons I'm no longer doing one-on-one teaching for you guys. I am trying to keep this live stream alive because I don't want the channel to die while I work on the novel. But on the other hand, I want to get this done. This is a big, hard goal. I started this novel in 1996, and I've spent sometimes months at a time working on it. I've gotten a lot of progress made. I figured out the voice. I figured out the structure. That took years of on and off work. And then I put it away because I couldn't write fiction and be a professional screenwriter at the same time. It was two kinds of thinking, and I couldn't go back and forth between them. So as a reward to myself, when I retired, I started this novel. And now I'm going to deliberately not take on any other projects until it is done. That's what's working for me right now. For most of my career, it worked for me to have 2 or 3 scripts at different levels. Like one was in the outline stage, one I was writing the rough draft, that kind of thing. That I would have a couple going, but never exactly at the same level of intensity. So the answer is usually multiple projects, yes, for me. In this particular case, I can't. I'm afraid of never finishing this damn thing. Hello, MC Squared. Okay. So Violet also asks, do you use the idea of a character flaw in your story? I wanted to ask if you could explain how the flaw is related to the theme. Like in Groundhog Day, hold on, Phil is selfish at the start, learns through the premise, repeated day, to be selfless. From this, how do you get the theme? Okay, so kind of two questions here. So I'm going to answer one by saying I did a video on theme. I will put a link down in the description. But this is my best thoughts on theme are in that video. As far as the flaw, I don't like it to be so programmatic. I don't like it to be so like, if you have this flaw, it has to come out in the story this way. All of my characters have flaws because all of people have flaws. I don't think of it as the flaw. I think of it as trying to understand who they are. So for instance, my main character, Tom, was an orphan who became a runaway vagrant drifter thief. And so part of his flaw is he's uncivilized. Like literally, he grew up on the outskirts of civilization during the Depression, when civilization was in rocky shape, still is. So Tom has a series of flaws. He has his need to his uncivilized, selfish behavior is one of them. He also simply has never been in love. He's never understood love. And all of this novel is about Tom's coming of age in his 20s to learn his place in the world and his understanding of love. So those are flaws. I don't think of them as like, oh, this is where I'm going to show the flaw, and this is where... It's simply, I know that this is Tom's story. I've got Tom's story in my head, and Tom's the points at which Tom is going to learn things about those flaws or not be able to overcome them. Those are parts of the story, but they're not programmed out as in, here's where he's going to give up the flaw, or here's where the plot is. It doesn't really work like that for me, ever. But especially in a novel, because a novel is just big and complex. So the answer is, my characters do have flaws. They should have flaws, but I don't think of them as a structure. I don't think of them as a required checkbox that I need to make sure I've fixed. Some of their flaws they're not going to overcome. Gene says, write something. Exactly. That is, honestly, I could not do this live stream at all. Just say, write something, and say it to myself, and then tell you that I did it. I wrote something. That is the lesson I'm trying to teach here with these blank pages that I'm going to try and fill. Write something. Get something on the page. That is, weirdly, considering I've got decades of experience at this, and I know this will work. I know that the only way to write something is to get something on the page. For some people, they need to get the first sentence perfect before they move on to the second. If that works for you, do it. That's fine. I don't work that way. I don't even know what perfect is until I've gotten a bunch of things, and then one will tell me. I will say, oh, that is the most important piece of this chapter, or that image is going to be the one that I'm going to work this around. And then I can start to play with the sentences. I just don't know enough yet until I've got some stuff down. Okay. So, would you say Whitliff wants to get gossip in this chapter and has a different super objective? In other words, what would you say the characters, what do they want? Can change, or is it static? Okay, this is an interesting question. Okay, Matt continues, or can they want two things at once, like get this guy off my back and stay with my girlfriend at the same time, or is it always in pursuit of one or the other? Sorry, this is not confusing at all. Here's the question. in my outline, let me show you what I got here. Okay, so for instance, in this story, each character does have something that they want. Do I have the outline up? Hold on. Okay, outline. Here we go. So each character has things they want. And what I've done is in breaking down like the story. So I know that Tom, for instance, the main thing he wants is to win the love of the woman Billy. Her name is Billy. And I know that Billy, the one thing she wants more than ever anything is to win the love or get Charlie, this painter who's in the story, to love her, or to overcome his artistic difficulties so that he can accept her love. So Tom loves Billy, Billy loves Charlie, Charlie is friends with Tom. That's the triangle. Each one of them has a goal. Charlie wants to make an artistic breakthrough in order to feel enough self-regard, feel good enough about himself to accept Billy's love. Billy is rich. Charlie is broke. And so Charlie is afraid to accept Billy's love without feeling some sense that he is not just taking from her. So that's the situation for each of the characters. Witliffe is trying to take down any artist that he feels competitive with, and to conceal his own weaknesses. So each character has a driving force in each part of the story. Each scene is just a step in that. In other words, in the first section of the book here, we meet Tom. He meets Billy and Charlie. He falls in love with Billy. He agrees to essentially work together with Charlie on a scheme to defraud the government of money in order to have the freedom to paint. Tom, he wants the money from the fraud scheme, but mainly he wants to get close to Billy. From the minute he sees Billy, he wants Billy as his number one thing. He'll take the money. He'll take whatever else he learns in this story, but what he wants most is Billy. However, Billy, what she wants most is Charlie. And what Charlie wants most is to become a great painter before he can accept love. That's the situation. Witliffe has his own goal, which is to destroy Charlie, especially because he's a better painter. In each scene, like when we meet Witliffe, he insults Charlie. Charlie throws some coffee on him. The next time we meet Witliffe, he's carrying that shame, that humiliation from Charlie throwing a cup of coffee at him, to go to Tom, who he knows is Charlie's friend, and see if he can get any dirt. So the initial impulse is still the same. Each scene is a piece of the ladder or the path of this character following out their central goal. So to say each in Matt's question, the question is, would you say that do they have a super objective? A super objective is an acting term, method acting term, which means basically the big thing behind the specific things they do. Wanting Billy's love, wanting to be a great painter. That super objective motivates the specific objectives in each scene. And all of that concept, the way of conceiving of scenes, which is basically a dramatic concept of understanding a scene, I do take from dramatic writing and put into novel writing. I just think it's true even if you're not writing a script. So the answer is yes. Everyone in this story has a super objective, has a main thing that I think they want. What I then do is break down at what part of their story are we? Like, are we at the part where they discover something about that starts this super objective? Is this where they discover an obstacle to it? Is this where they overcome the obstacle to it? I try not to be too abstract. So for instance, this guy Tom, he's in New York. He meets this painter Charlie. They're going to scheme together to get some money. But in getting to know Charlie, he meets Charlie's girlfriend. And that's like the inciting incident. That's the lightning bolt of change in Tom's story. Is that once he gets to know Billy, once he understands the situation, which is that Billy is Charlie's girlfriend, but that Billy and Charlie are having trouble, Tom is doing everything he can to try and figure out how to get close to Billy and win her away from Charlie. Each step of the story that Tom's in is just a piece of that. So he has a more specific objective. Like in one scene, he just wants to spy on Billy. In another scene, he wants to tell her his feelings, etc. A lot of this is sort of covered in a video I did called Building Character Arcs. And I would suggest you take a look at that because that kind of explains how I look at this. All of this is stuff that I do structure out the way I would do a script, but not in the, whereas a script would have a beginning, middle, and end, 3 acts. The middle act is the biggest one. This novel has kind of 4 main sections. And of this 4 main sections, each one has 2 or 3 sections within it. The first is about how the character gets into New York. Then the next is how he meets Charlie and falls in love with Billy. Then how agreeing to this scam that he's going to do with Charlie, which is a long-term project, means that he has to establish a life in New York that he's never had before. And he's learning a lot about how people live because he's been a drifter and he's never had a stable existence. So that's a big section of the story, is him learning how to live as a masquerade for his scam, but it also becomes an actual lesson in life for him. So the answer is, I do believe that you can have 2 motives at once, but one of them is usually central. There's no absolute set rule. But for me, I like to have a priority. I like to have something that I'm like, this is the main thing driving this character. And those tend to be what I go back to and I say, well, that doesn't mean that they're going to be doing the same thing or working on the same project every single moment. But, for instance, Tom, whose main goal is to win Billy's love, for the second section of the story, Billy, because they're getting too close, leaves town. She's gone for an entire quarter of the story. At which point Tom becomes closer to Charlie. It wasn't his intention, but so that's the story where there's within the story of Tom trying to figure out what he having become involved with Billy, he finds himself unintentionally becoming close with Charlie as well. And that becomes a section of the story. Okay. Hi, Najo. Lots of comments. Let me get to them. I'm going to, yes. Okay, procrastination stage. That's what we're talking about. I plan to make a novel for one of my screenplays and take your advice. Why not a novel? Why a script? Yes. Great. I am very, very glad to hear that. Sonia's talking about the outline format. Keeping the outline short enough to fit in the core value is hard, but it keeps me on my toes trying to be concise. Yes. I totally get that. Once again, like I said, I am not sure if this method that I'm showing you will remain my method. It's the method I'm figuring out for this project because it's where I am right now. If I got to do 10 novels, I might figure out a different process by the time I had done a couple of them. I don't know if I'll ever get to do that. But right now, and this is important, this is a really key thing. Your process will change depending on where you are in your life and what kind of project you're in. Different projects require different processes. Even with me having a fairly familiar set routine of how I do a project, which I have talked about in this video, how to organize a project. Even though I tend to use that basic approach, every single project is a little different and the form of the work will change a little. In this case, the project is very new for me in many ways, so I am adapting my screenwriting process into it. That doesn't mean I'm getting it right. It means I'm just trying to get this one to work. So the answer is every project is an opportunity to make the process work for the project. Okay. Do you start with an external plot and add it, or you do everything together? Hi, Goldie. Nice to see you. Okay. Oh, I see. Your novel seems to balance external, internal, and emotional character growth and relationship plot very well. When you outlined the novel, did you start with an external plot and then add or do everything together? Excellent question. The answer is definitely I don't have like a concrete, I get all the external stuff and then I fill in. The external things are motivated by the internal things. And the internal things happen in part because of the external things. These things are not extricable from each other. You can't say, this is actually something that really bothers me when people do like how to write and they say, all right, you need to make a list of your external challenges and your internal challenges, as if they're not related, as if you just like checking in boxes. That's not how life works, and so it can't be how writing works. It can't be how storytelling works. The answer is you're constantly learning from each thing about the other possibilities. In other words, you're learning from the external. If I know in this story, this guy Tom becomes involved in a scheme to pretend to be a painter in order to get money from the government, but also in order to win the love of this woman. The steps on which he has to externally work out this scam are partly motivated by his internal ignorance of art and culture and of his need to he would do it differently if he was out for the money or if he's out for the girl, because the fact that he's secretly trying to find ways to break up Billy and Charlie means that a lot of his activity goes into their social lives, parties that they go together or places that they hang out together where he can try and work that. Those external circumstances, okay, now I have to come up with a bunch of parties, and I have to figure out how to differentiate the parties so that I can say, oh, at this party, this happened. Those are things that are being motivated by the inner But then once I come up with the outer thing of, I knew I needed Whitliff to come over to Tom's house. He needs to see Tom's work, and Edith has to be with him in order to see Tom's paintings, because there's a painting of Billy, which Tom has stolen. The point is that these external, I have to have this happen, Edith has to see this, meant that I thought, okay, well, what's going to provoke that? And what excuse would they have? And that came to the idea that if it's around, happens during the winter, I thought, oh, Christmas carols. The Whitliff will use the excuse that he's drunken caroling, and they bang on his door as an excuse to get in. There isn't a fully internal or fully external plot. All items in a story are both internal and external. Okay. Let's see, 20 or 30, like there's no yeah, okay. When I said at 20 or 30, like my age, when you're 60, there's less difference between 20 and 30 than you would think. Hey, Najo, I give you hope. Yes, never too late. Never too late. Ricky says, I have a beginning, middle, and end, and I'm working on what order they should be in. Any thoughts? I want the reader to. Okay, I'm not entirely sure if that I understand the question, because to me, there's absolutely no way beginning and middle and end are in order already. So the question is, like, if you were to start in the middle, frankly, that would become your beginning. And then the question would be, why would you bother going back to something before then? So basically, at least at the moment, beginning and middle and end are one of the few things that I think are pretty universal, and because they're it's almost like physics. Like I said, no matter where you start, at some point you're starting. That's your beginning. If you decide to begin with a flash forward to the crisis at the near the end, and then you go back, that's okay. Then your beginning is that, and then your middle, you'll like go back and catch up. But whatever happens, beginning, middle, and end, to me, at least, is a is simply the status of the pieces on the line. You can't, no matter what you do, the last thing is going to be the end. And if you move something, that becomes the end. And the first thing is going to be the beginning, and the middle is going to be what's between those two things. Chronologically, you can go from the beginning of time to the end of time of the characters, or you can tell things out of order. But in terms of, this kind of gets into the question of story versus plot or structure. The beginning, middle, and end of these people's experiences is set by their lifetime, like by their experience. So if Tom arrives in New York in 1935, and then the story goes till 1947, the events that happen in the order they happen to are a line in time. However, I can decide to tell different parts at different times, and I'm basically going chronologically. That's the story. That's the plot, the structure of the events of their lives. So what I try to do when I'm working on a story is make sure I understand the story that they experience, their lives. And then I decide over that, which pieces am I going to pull out of this flow of their life and make important. And that becomes my story, my structure. Writing something, go write something is about all I really have to say. Okay. She Breathes in Gold. In terms of having a lot of works in progress, remember that finishing them all is not always the most important thing. That is true. Pursuit of these projects themselves provides so much passion and richness to your life. Yes, this is absolutely true. The most important thing is to keep working. For me personally, it is important to finish some things because artistically it just feels unsatisfying to never finish anything. If I was feeling completely content, if I never wanted to show anyone, and this is actually an interesting note. I want to talk about this idea that I had, and I mentioned it. You come to a point in any project, at least I do. Here, let me show you my notes. This is a note I made to talk to you guys about. It's the point when the project becomes boring and irritating. For every project that I know of, there comes a point at which you kind of just want it to be over with. You want it to be done. You want to do a new thing. For a while, whatever you're working on, it feels so good and so big and so like magical that you can't imagine anything else being quite as important. But frankly, at that point, it's very hard to write. You're too awestruck by your own work. So what I want to talk about here is the idea that at a certain point, you begin to get irritated by your work. You begin to say, okay, as good as this is, it's never going to be the only thing in my life. It's not bigger than my whole life. It's just a story. And in my writing process, there comes a point at which I'm not like, ooh, this is exciting. And there's a part of like, oh, I've got to do all this craft, this construction work, which will take artistry and will be exciting in an artistic way, but it's work. It's grinding, and that's important to recognize and to not fear. To not say, oh, this means the project's gone bad. I used to drop things. I used to be like, oh, if I'm feeling kind of bored with it, if I'm feeling kind of like it's not everything to me, then I probably should set it aside and do something else. That's actually not healthy, for me at least. The thing that I've learned is that when you get to that point where you know it's what it is, when you've figured out enough of it to feel confident of, oh yeah, that's going to work this way, I believe. Then you have to get it over with. Just get it done. Even though it's not as exciting as it used to be, then there's a whole second kind of work, which is really craftsmanship. It's artistry. It's the technique and the of taking those wild, inspired things and crafting them until they work as an object outside of you. I am just beginning to hit that point of this novel, which I had never, like I said, it's been decades. It always felt not quite set. Now, I absolutely know what the scenes are going to be. I do not know exactly how I'm going to do them. That's the step I'm at now. But I know that if I were to write each one of these scenes, it would become a novel, and the novel would work basically like I think it will. At this point, I'm kind of bored. It's like, all right, there's a more interesting thing coming up. That's when I have to start to push myself to say, you're at the end part. You're at the part where you're actually building it, and to recognize that that's a good thing. So She Breathes in Gold says, you are who you are because you are bursting with passion and creativity. We get to share in your passion. Yes, this is true. But while I am perhaps more than most people truly content to just, as I've said in other things, playing down, just writing because I like to write and making stuff up in my head because I like to do it, and no one will ever really get it or see it. But there's a lot of stuff. It's like, it's fun to share. It's fun to finish it and have it operate on its own. It's like you put together this machine and then it runs. And other people are like, whoa, look at that machine. That's a cool part of the artistic experience. And every once in a while, I need to have that be part of it. So actually, one of the things that I've thought of is when this novel is done, I have so many unfinished projects that I sort of want to share that I may actually start a live stream project of essentially telling you the story of something that I'm never going to write, but simply sharing how far I did get on it before I gave it up or lost my way. Anyway, so that's my solution to the fact that I think of more things than I can possibly do. Sorry if this has been answered already, but are you writing this novel in the past or present tense, and what POV? These are things I'm grappling with at this time around. Okay, the answer is, this book is written in the form of a memoir by the main character. So the 4 sections of the book are 4 notebooks, like, composition notebooks, like the school notebooks with the black and white covers. He's gotten those, and he's handwriting his memoirs 40 years after these events happen. So it is told, narrated directly by the first person narrator as his recounting of the story to you. So it's past tense, first person, with the benefit of hindsight. He can talk about what happened, both describing it as an event, but also critiquing it as a person who's looking back on it. There are little sections of prose in between these 4 notebooks which tell the story of what happened to the notebooks after they were written. They were discovered by some other people. Those are written third person past tense. And they'll be in italics. I want to make it very clear they are not the notebooks. They are the finding of the notebooks. So that's the form I came up with. Excuse me. Every story needs its own form, and only you can decide which one you want to do. There is no right or wrong in a novel. In screenwriting, there is a required format, but then again, Oppenheimer breaks it. Oppenheimer has sections written in the first person. Anyway, so the answer is, you need to go partly by your feeling, your instinct. In other words, I'd like this to feel slower or faster. I'd like it to be present tense or past tense. In this case, because it is a story about life-changing events told with some perspective, I wanted to have this sense of looking back on the past. So that's why I chose the format I had chosen. Ricky, bravo. Yes, good. I am glad that you got long lives in your family, and I'm very impressed that you are working on your second novel at 77. It gives me hope, as I'm hoping to give others hope. Thank you. Yes, no, I understand. She Breathes in Gold is just saying, don't feel bad because I'm awesome. Don't feel bad, I'm awesome. Sure. No, I'm okay with that. I feel bad in that there is a healthy form of regret. The reason that I want to allow myself a healthy amount of regret about the ones I didn't finish before is in order to get myself to finish this one. Because a part of me feels like, I basically got this figured out. I could quit and know in my mind that it would be good, but no one else would ever know. I need to get past that. So I need to feel the regret of unfinished work in order to remind myself to get things done. Cool. Good. Najo and Ricky supporting each other. Excellent. Hi, Matthew. How long will my novel be? I don't know. My guess is between 200 and 300 pages. I'm bad about words. I don't understand word counts at all. I have never. To me, it's pages. Now, admittedly, pages change depending on whether you're double-spaced or single-spaced. But my idea would be eventually a physical published book would be around 200 to 250 pages. It's my guess. I don't know. I haven't written enough to know for sure. Good night, Learn to Teach. When writing your first draft, would you deviate from your outline? Some, but not too much. I don't generally go wildly off it. The outline. The question is, when I'm writing the first draft, do I find myself taking all new directions and leaving the outline? Not usually. If I've got the outline, I usually like it. I usually think it's right. I guess the question is, when is the best point to start the story I have in mind? Once again, there is no right answer to that. You also may have to try different things and then find out which ones work and don't work for you. What's the best point to start a story? You got to feel that one. You got to say, I'm this one. It works for me emotionally. Okay, because honestly, it's a choice. There's not a right or wrong answer. Okay. Goldie says, thank you. I'm just starting an external plot premise. So now I'm trying to make sure the internal character work and relations, they work. They will only have a cohesion if you think of them as all part of one thing. In other words, internal and external, they don't exist without each other. You can't have an internal story with no external events, and you can't have external events that don't have some internal motive. So frankly, anytime you have either an inner feeling or an outer action, the other thing is there. It's implied somewhere in there. You simply need to think about it, but it's already there. The craftsmanship is, I think that for me, that's where it gets down to just like sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph. The craftsmanship comes from like, do I like to read this? Does this please me? Does this work for me? Should it be longer or shorter? In this specific instance, I begin to get a lot of pleasure out of that, but I can't do it until I have something on the page. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. Michael spent 2 weeks on notes, which translated to 1 page of script. This often happens. I always say it takes longer to outline a story than to write it. Yeah. I brought the wisdom. Yes, exactly. Once there's this weird thing you have to get used to as an artist about the excitement of inspiration and discovery and the excitement of intricate technique. They're both part of the game. You need to feel both and and not feel like, oh, if I'm not feeling inspiration, then I'm lost. You're not. You're just probably in the technical end. And there's a joy and an excitement to the technique. Thank you, Ricky. Okay. So always explain. Oh, good. I'm so glad. That's actually a perfect place to stop with how great I am. Oh man, I can't do that with a straight face. Okay. This has been a pleasure. I hope it has been useful. I will catch up with all of this, come back to the progress reports in a few more weeks, tell you how it's going. But in the meantime, this has been delightful. And I wish you all a happy Valentine's Day for those of you who celebrate. And go write something.